So currently within US politics, there is somewhat of a witch hunt taking place. Simply put, both Democrats and Republicans have joined forces to essentially call out the Trump administration for having connections with Russia. Now, I'm not going to argue whether or not these politicians have a valid reasons for their accusations, but I will say this. I've seen this before, and this event that's taking place currently has already happened around 1947. Simply put, what we are seeing here is not new. I mean, if you critically think about this and view this from an outside perspective, all you have to do is kind of play a game of mix and match and just compare Joseph Stalin to Vladimir Putin. For example, Stalin at this time was viewed as this evil, benevolent communist dictator who wanted to spread the communist ideology around the world, and that included America. A lot of people at that time were scared of this because, well, they didn't want to follow communism, and therefore certain programs, McCarthyism, were introduced to somewhat stop this spread of communism. For example, at this time, 1947, Stalin was seen as this evil, cruel, benevolent dictator who wanted to do anything and everything in his power to spread the evils of communism. Putin in today's world can be seen somewhat in a similar light, but instead of communism, the ideology being practiced is just plain old authoritarianism. And even on a deeper level, one can say that America is just as paranoid as we were in 1947 due to how we are currently acting towards the Trump administration and their ties with Russia. Hell, you can even go into you can even go deeper in this and compare Michael Flynn to those who were accused back in the 1940s of having communist ties. And just think about it for a second. When Michael Flynn was accused for talking with Russian officials when he said he didn't, you had this huge pouring of people stepping in, politicians in particular and talk show hosts, saying he had connections with Russia and Putin set him up and used him as a pawn to go to Trump and essentially push Putin's whatever agenda. This is a problem because we've seen this before. And I hate to repeat it, but yeah, we've seen this before. Back then, in the 1940s, in the 1950s, you had people blacklisting celebrities because they were scared that they had communist ties. And yeah, some celebrities did have leftist ideologies and did believe in communism. But that doesn't change, or that doesn't distract from the fact that what we did during that time was really barbaric. We were essentially pointing out people left and right who we thought were communists and saying that these people are traitors of America and they should be kicked out or placed in jail. Currently, what we're seeing is not that different. I mean, you can even go on websites like reddit.com and see this ideology in practice, particularly the subreddit r/politics. If you go on this subreddit and actually read up and look at these articles that are being posted, they essentially are all saying the same thing about Russia. Trump's administration had connections with Russia on this. Trump administration had connections with Russia on that. It's so scary, because we are essentially replaying history, yet no one is calling it out yet. And to make it even worse, this is all in terms of influence because people are scared that Putin is influencing Donald Trump. That's really not that different in terms of what people said about communism in the 1940s. People were scared that politicians, celebrities would spread the word of communism and convince Americans to follow it, and certain Americans didn't want that to happen. The same can be said with Russia. People are scared that Putin's plan and influence, trying to step in with his authoritative view sets and essentially brainwash Trump to follow them. But we can even go back to the beginning of all this and how all this Russia fiasco started with the DNC leaks. Yeah, what Russia did was considered influence on how they decided to choose the DNC instead of the Republican Party to release information, and that is cause of concern, but I'm not going to argue that. What I'm going to argue is how we're acting about it right now. I mean, if you can just go on CNN, there's probably someone going off about how Russia has links, but you have to think about it and think about how silly all of this is. See, the role Russia played in the election really isn't concrete. Better yet, it's really not known whether or not Russia actually played a role in the election. Essentially, what we're seeing now is just a lot of assumptions. A majority of these reports that are coming out, specifically by the Washington Post and the Independent, where you have individuals speaking out saying that Trump does have ties with Russians, are all coming from anonymous sources. Guys, this has happened before, and you should be concerned as American citizens here, because these anonymous sources have really no backing behind them. In fact, with Michael Flynn, the issue with him wasn't the fact that he was talking to a Russian ambassador, it was the fact that he just didn't tell Trump about it. It really isn't known whether or not he talked about top secret information, but it didn't matter because we automatically criticized the guy for doing what he did, despite the fact that there was not enough evidence to say whether or not he did something that was related to treason. In fact, people were automatically saying this guy should be thrown in jail because he disobeyed an ancient act known as the Logan Act, in which no one has ever used in law over the past 100+ years. This is serious because this is no different from when an individual, let's say an individual back in 1950s Hollywood, thought a person was a communist. Hey, I think that guy's a communist. You know what? Even though I really don't have any support to give to these individuals, the FBI, I'm just going to say it because I think so. These individuals used to say, hey, I think he's a communist. FBI used to step in, or the individual was blacklisted without really any supporting evidence. This is serious. This assumption paranoid world we're living in right now is pretty scary. Because, well, by the end of the day, similar to what happened in McCarthyism, hell, we can even go back to the Palmer raids, all this is going to do is cause more chaos due to people being scared and feared of Russian influence. But I'm going to scurry away from that topic for a bit, and I'm just going to go to the reason why I think all this is happening right now. See, history has a thing of repeating itself. But the thing about when history repeats itself, it's never going to be in the exact same format in which it was originally seen. For example, you have Adolf Hitler committing genocide, killing 11 million plus people. A couple of years down the line, you had Pol Pot doing essentially the same exact thing. They did the exact same thing, however, they did it kind of different. Adolf Hitler hated the Bolsheviks, hated communism in general. Pol Pot essentially followed this communist rhetoric and approved of it. They were essentially two sides of the same coin. What we're seeing today is somewhat similar. Back in the 1940s, you had essentially conservatives talking about the Red Scare, mainly conservatives talking about the Red Scare, saying that these communists are going to come here, they're going to ruin America, they're trying to destroy America, they're going to send spies here, some of these spies are going to leak information. You're seeing the same thing, but this is ironically taking place more on the left side of politics. Now you have Democrats, liberal politicians, making these insane accusations with no evidence. This is crazy. Is no one not seeing how crazy and ironic this is? Flynn had ties with Russia. Trump administration has Russian connections, even though there really isn't any solid evidence to support this claim. But think about this even deeper. Why are they doing all of this? And this is where my opinion steps in. Honestly, I don't think none of this has to do anything with Russia. All this has to deal with is the fact that Trump won the election and people are trying to look for a scapegoat as to why. That's it. That's what I honestly believe it. I think it's insane that politicians who went to Harvard and Yale University are that foolish enough to automatically jump to a conclusion off of flimsy evidence that is not concrete. And the reason why I'm saying all of this goes all the way back to, of course, how history repeats itself, but even more importantly, goes back to Flynn. Flynn is a keen example of this because automatically once this information was heard that Flynn resigned, people were literally calling for this guy's head. They were telling that Flynn needs to go straight to jail. Flynn needs to essentially be charged with treason, life imprisonment, because of what he did, despite the fact that there was no clear, concrete evidence of what Flynn actually did. And yeah, I said this prior in the video, but let that sink in. That is really no different from back in the day. But hell, we can even go deeper. Let's go deeper. Remember that guy by the name of Emmett Till? You know that African American kid who was killed because a white woman said he whispered at him and said inappropriate comments, and her husband or boyfriend decided to go pick him up with a group of his friends and kill him? Remember how people used to always use the excuse, well, from what I remember, especially when I used to watch documentaries on this, where people said, well, he shouldn't have said anything. He should have kept quiet. He knew this was the South. And then, of course, in 2017, the woman who accused Emmett Till of what he did admitted that, yeah, he actually didn't say anything. You see how that mindset of just believing what people say or believing what people assume to be true can lead to? It can lead to things like Emmett Till, where you automatically get angry and believe what the person is saying and commit actions in which shouldn't have been committed. And yeah, I understand what happened with Emmett Till is a little far stretched, but I still believe that the mindset behind it applies to this situation. Currently in today's politics, you have politicians criticizing, calling out anyone who had connections with Russia, particularly in the Trump administration. Why? Because, let's be honest here, they're probably just scared shitless of Donald Trump. Whether or not their opinions are valid, I'm not going to argue that, but I'm going to say that this mindset has never led to anything positive in history. Now, I just went off on a rant there, but hopefully you guys kind of understand what I'm saying. We are repeating history by repeating the Red Scare. And if you just need a little quick summary of what I'm trying to say here, it's pretty simple. We're fearing a certain nation because they are what people to believe to be doing, influencing us in a negative light. 2, people are running their emotions off of a paranoid-like state to where they think anyone who is associated with this country should be ostracized or essentially thrown in jail for their connections. But 3 is I think is the most important part here. People are using this Russian connection essentially for no reason. I mean, they're using this Russian connection off of baseless assumptions with no facts to actually support it. And I understand what I'm saying might not be the most coherent because, of course, this is a rant. But if you think about it and you do your research, and I'll leave a link below talking about the Red Scare, talking about McCarthyism, you're going to see the connection here. But to end it, I just want to say this. History repeats itself, but as I said prior in the video, it repeats itself in different forms. In my opinion, I think we are seeing history repeating itself in a different form to where instead of the conservatives being the paranoid ones, you have liberals and of course some conservatives being the majority of the paranoid. And all of this, in my opinion, has nothing to do with Russia. In fact, it's just something people are using to explain how Trump won the election through influence. And yeah, that's the rant. So guys, if you like this video, please like and subscribe. Press the bell button to see more content such as this. My name is Bertrand Usher. This has been a rant on whether or not we are currently in a Red Scare. I keep messing up there. And essentially, as you guys can tell, yeah, I agree. I think we are currently seeing a Red Scare. And sadly enough, no one's talking about it enough, and no one's actually commenting it. Hopefully, this drama with Russia is going to die down, and people are going to start using their senses again. But history has shown that when people start thinking like this in a paranoid state, they end up doing really stupid things. But I'll pray on it. So, yep, guys, this has been Bertrand Usher. This has been Cyber Entertainment, and I am out. Also, before I forget, if you guys disagree with me, please state it in the comment section. I'm 100% to reading it. I won't criticize you. I won't talk back. Just make sure it's a constructed argument to where I can understand as to why I am wrong. But yeah, that's it.